Okay, just wanted to make sure I was here before I started anything. Um, but welcome to my live performance of Right on the Spine. Um, Now, if you look on the website and look at um, my portfolio of it, you'll see that I have done 21 readings of books. All of these are my books, and that's because reading is one of the best forms of inspiration, and it definitely has inspired me to write. So last semester I looked into getting a single word for inspiration. Now I'm also looking at books as forms of inspiration. So the word today is wonderful. This is the card and the word that I got last semester from the winter show. Wonderful. And I will be reading from C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. This is one of my favourite books, and I have such fond memories of it. I remember this and a few other books my dad would read to me when I was younger, and quite often I would just take the book from him and start reading it myself because I just wanted to know what happened next. I was already so engrossed in stories and storytelling ever since I can remember. Um, so yeah, it's reading is really important to me. It's as important as writing. So I will read to you the last few pages of this book because this is one of my favourite endings in general. Okay, hope you enjoy. That evening, after tea, the four children all managed to get down to the beach again and get their shoes and stockings off and feel the sand between their toes. But the next day was more solemn. For then, in the great hall of Cair Paravel, that wonderful hall with the ivory roof and the west wall hung with peacock's feathers, and the eastern door which looks towards the sea, in the presence of all their friends and to the sound of trumpets, Aslan solemnly crowned them and led them to the four thrones amid deafening shouts of "Long live King Peter! Long live Queen Susan! Long live King Edmund! Long live Queen Lucy!" Once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen. "Bear it well, sons of Adam, bear it well, daughters of Eve," said Aslan. And through the eastern door, which was wide open, came the voices of the mermen and the mermaids, swimming close to the shore and singing in honour of their new kings and queens. So the children sat on their thrones, and sceptres were put into their hands, and they gave rewards and honours to all their friends, to Tumnus the fawn, and to the beavers and the giant Rumblebuffin, to the leopards and the good centaurs, and the good dwarfs, and to the lion. And that night there was a great feast in Cair Paravel, and revelry and dancing, and gold flashed and wine flowed, and answering to the music inside. But stranger, sweeter, and more piercing came the music of the sea people. But amidst all these rejoicings, Aslan himself quietly slipped away, and when the kings and queens noticed that he wasn't there, they said nothing about it, for Mr. Beaver had warned them. "He'll be coming and going," he had said. "One day you'll see him and another you won't. He doesn't like being tied down, and of course he has other countries to attend to. It's quite all right. He'll often drop in, only you mustn't press him. He's wild, you know, not like a tame lion." And now, as you see, the story is nearly, but not quite, at an end. These 2 kings and 2 queens governed Narnia well, and long and happy was their reign. At first much of their time was spent in seeking out the remnants of the White Witch's army and destroying them, and indeed for a long time there would be news of evil lurking in the wilder parts of the forest, a haunting here and a killing there, a glimpse of a werewolf one month, and a rumour of a hag the next. But in the end all that foul brood was stamped out, and they made good laws and kept the peace, and saved good trees from being unnecessarily cut down, and liberated young dwarfs and young satyrs from being sent to school, and generally stopped busybodies and interferers, and encouraged ordinary people who wanted to live and let live. And they drove back the fierce giants, quite a different sort from giant Rumblebuffin, in the north of Narnia, when these ventured across the frontier, and they entered into friendship and alliance with countries beyond the sea, and paid them visits of state and received visits of state from them. And they themselves grew and changed as the years passed over them, and Peter became a tall and deep-chested man and a great warrior, and he was called King Peter the Magnificent. And Susan grew into a tall and gracious woman with black hair that fell almost to her feet, and the kings of the country beyond the sea began to send ambassadors asking for her hand in marriage, and she was called Queen Susan the Gentle. Edmund was a graver and quieter man than Peter, and great in counsel and judgment. He was called King Edmund the Just. But as for Lucy, she was always gay and golden-haired, and all princes in those parts desired her to be their queen, and her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. So they lived in great joy, and if ever they remembered their life in this world, it was only as one remembers a dream. And one year it fell out that Tumnus, who was a middle-aged faun by now and beginning to stout, came down river and brought them news that the white stag had once more appeared in his parts, the white stag who would give you wishes if you caught him. So these 2 kings and 2 queens, with their principal members of their court, rode a hunting with fawns and hounds in the western woods to follow the white stag. And they had not hunted long before they had a sight of him. And he led them a great pace over rough and smooth and through thick and thin, till the horses of all the courtiers were tired out, and these 4 were still following. And they saw the stag enter into a thicket where their horses could not follow. Then said King Peter, for they talked in quite a different style now, having been kings and queens for so long, "Fair consorts, let us now alight from our horses and follow this beast into the thicket, for in all my days I never hunted a nobler quarry." "Sir," said the others, "even so let us do." So they alighted and tied their horses to trees and went on into the thick wood on foot. And as soon as they entered it, Queen Susan said, "Fair friends, here is a great marvel, for I seem to see a tree of iron." "Madam," said King Edmund, "if you look well upon it, you shall see it is a pillar of iron, with a lantern set on the top thereof." "By the lion's mane, a strange device," said King Peter, "to set a lantern here where the trees cluster so thick about it, and so high above it, that if it were lit it should give light to no man." "Sir," said Queen Lucy, "by likelihood, when this post and this lamp were set here, there were smaller trees in the place, or fewer, or none. For this is a young wood, and the iron post is old." And they stood looking upon it. Then said King Edmund, "I know not how it is, but this lamp on the post worketh upon me strangely. It runs in my mind that I have seen the like before, as it were in a dream, or in the dream of a dream." "Sir," answered they all, "it is even so with us also. And more," said Queen Lucy, "for it will not go out of my mind that if we pass this post and lantern, either we shall find strange adventures, or else some great change of our fortunes." "Madam," said King Edmund, "the like foreboding stirreth in my heart also." "And in mine, fair brother," said King Peter. "And in mine too," said Queen Susan. "Wherefore by my counsel we shall lightly return to our horses and follow this white stag no further." "Madam," said King Peter, "therein I pray to thee, have me excused, for never since we 4 were kings and queens in Narnia have we set our hands to any higher matter, as battles, quests, feats of arms, acts of justice, and the like, and then given over. But always what we have taken in hand, the same we have achieved." "Sister," said Queen Lucy, "my royal brother speaks rightly, and it seems to me we should be ashamed if for any fearing or foreboding we turn back from following so noble a beast as now we have in chase." "And so say I," said King Edmund, "and I have such desire to find the signification of this thing that I would not by my good will turn back for the richest jewel in all Narnia and all the islands." "Then in the name of Aslan," said Queen Susan, "if ye will all have it so, let us go on and take the adventure that shall fall to us." So these kings and queens entered the thicket, and before they had gone a score of paces they all remembered that the thing they had seen was called a lamp-post, and before they had gone 20 more they noticed that they were making their way not through branches but through coats. And the next moment they were all tumbling out of a wardrobe door into the empty room. And they were no longer kings and queens in their hunting array, but just Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, in their old clothes. It was the same day and the same hour of the day on which they had all gone into the wardrobe to hide. Mrs. Macready and the visitors were still talking in the passage, but luckily they never came into the empty room, and so the children weren't caught. And that would have been the end of the story if it hadn't been that they felt they really must explain to the professor why the 4 of the coats out of his wardrobe were missing. And the professor, who was a very remarkable man, didn't tell them not to be silly or not to tell lies, but believed the whole story. "No," he said, "I don't think it will be any good trying to go back through the wardrobe door to get the coats. You won't get into Narnia again by that route. Nor would the coats be much use by now if you did. Eh? What's that? Yes, of course you'll get back to Narnia again some day. Once a king in Narnia, always a king in Narnia. But don't go trying to use the same route twice. Indeed, don't try to get there at all. It'll happen when you're not looking for it, and don't talk too much about it even amongst yourselves, and don't mention it to anyone else unless you find that they've had adventures of the same sort themselves." "What's that? How will you know?" "Oh, you'll know, all right. Odd things, they say, even their looks will let the secret out. Keep your eyes open. Bless me, what do they teach them at these schools?" And that is the very end of the adventure of the wardrobe. But if the professor was right, it was the only beginning of the adventures in Narnia. And that was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe ending. I'm sure you heard the word wonderful right at the beginning to describe Care Paravel, but I just chose this one because this book has inspired me so much over the years. I mean, I have created magnificent worlds that were based on Narnia, that were based on the inspiration that this book and the whole series gave to me. Because that's how powerful reading is. Because some people have said to me that literature is not art, but it is. I mean, if you say that literature is not art, then you say none of these are art. And that, I think, is just cruel to say that these aren't artistic, because they've put so much work into these books. And I feel it as well, because I'm a writer and I've put work into my art, which is writing. So literature is art. Don't forget it. And I will sign off now because I don't think I have much more to say, but I hope you enjoyed Right on the Spine with The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. I will be back at 6:15 with the word Phoenix. And I'm sure you can guess what book I have chosen for that, because it's Harry Potter and the Order of the blank. I'm sure you could have guessed that though, considering some of you know me as quite the Potterhead. Oh well. Doesn't matter being predictable or not. I'll see you all soon.